but they're investing into crypto. They're using DeFi to learn. I think Albert Einstein called it one of the great world wonders is compounding interest.
Yes,
they're discovering compounding interest.
Yeah,
and that's huge.
Yeah, and that's all
happened at the beginning of the month. This is just from a few days ago as well, at the beginning of October. I said this is huge for DeFi expansion. Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another CYPRX video banger. In today's video, we're going to be listening to some of the most prominent voices in this space, individuals from the likes of credit union service organizations, Metallicus, Maple Finance. We're going to be diving into some video clips from asset managers, reading documents from the likes of the Bank of International Settlements, and we're really going to fixate our attention on decentralized finance and how it has transformed how people think about money. We know that one of the most compelling innovations in all of crypto is crypto collateralized lending, which is a system where digital assets can be deposited, pooled, and lent out with yields that compound continuously, not quarterly or annually. And this is exactly what the rich are going to do once they enter into the digital asset ecosystem, because it's already what they've been doing in traditional finance for the longest time. When these financial institutions come in, they are going to need to hedge against the volatility in this market, and they're going to want to compound their wealth over a prolonged period of time. And so they're going to look to lend out their digital assets, never having to sell them, loop in DeFi strategies, earn yield, and compound.
Wholeheartedly agree with you on never wanting to sell Bitcoin. And I think, just to elaborate on that, the play that the very wealthy did over the last few decades was you hold your assets. You want to hold financial assets because as the dollar has been continually deprecated and depreciated, that pushes up the price of financial assets. One way inflation manifests itself is that the price of Apple stock goes up, right? Because a dollar is now worth less than it was before, which means the price of everything has to go up, including financial assets. So the very wealthy don't denominate their wealth in dollars, as in they don't keep it in cash in the bank. They keep it in financial assets or real assets which appreciate. And I think for our generation, millennials, Zoomers, the newer generations coming through, a lot of them are priced out of the real estate market, which was what boomers accumulated most of their wealth in, and instead they're looking at alternatives. Real estate can't appreciate at double-digit compounding rates for the next 20 years, because otherwise you're going to end up in a world where a house costs 30 times somebody's annual salary. So it's just, mathematically impossible. However, Bitcoin compounded at 54% over the last 7 years. If Bitcoin continues to compound even at a rate north of 20%, it becomes an incredible asset for the younger generations to own, to accumulate wealth. And I think they should look at borrowing against that in the same way that boomers borrow against the equity in their house. So you retain the upside, you don't cop a tax bill, and you can fund lifestyle purchases and continue to compound your wealth.
Couldn't have said it better. This is the CEO of Maple Finance, Sid Powell. And so this goes hand in hand with something that Marshall Hayner just recently said in an interview from the CU broadcast. We'll get into this in just 1 second. And then after we listen to Marshall Hayner, I want to dive into this post directly from Paul Gray, where he goes into detail. This is such a phenomenal article piece here on X that Paul Gray wrote, discussing and talking about DeFi lending, a new frontier for banks and financial institutions. So back to what Sid Powell just said. He mentioned that lending out your digital assets, borrowing against them, retaining upside, copying a tax break, and constantly compounding and growing your wealth is exactly what the younger generation are going to seek in this new digital era of finance. And again, this just goes hand in hand with something that Marshall Hayner just recently said in an interview from 2 days ago. Take a second and listen to what the CEO of Metallicus goes on here to say, which just goes hand in hand with what the CEO Sid Powell said from Maple Finance.
Really take a hard look at what's happening in the digital asset space and seize the opportunity, because like I said earlier, the regulation has just passed. We have the Genius Act, the Clarity Act. You have a very crypto-friendly regulator with the NCUA and Chairman Kyle Huntman, who's been very great to the crypto space and I think understands it very well. And so the atmosphere aligning with all of these, I called it like the stars aligning. You have the crypto space that was formerly debanked by a lot of the large banks and not treated very well.
Yeah, you're right about that.
They believe in the ethos of the credit unions because that aligns with the ethos of Bitcoin and blockchain. and they want to come and they want to keep their assets inside of the credit union. So, would you keep your life savings in your PayPal account? Probably not.
Not really.
It's probably not a good idea. No offense, PayPal,
Yeah.
but you want to keep it inside a credit union or a bank. And that's what people want with digital assets. So the stars have aligned in that sense that the technology is evolving. People want to, members want to keep crypto and buy and trade crypto inside the credit union. And now we also have an opportunity to help the credit union space grow on the technology side, but also retain deposits, to prevent deposits from flowing out to third parties. It's a huge one. And also just to stay relevant with Gen Z. Gen Z loves crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, really all ages. I'm a
yeah.
millennial, but I love crypto. My grandfather's 91 years old. He loves crypto. And I know even I don't know what the one before Gen Z is called, but even the
I'm all lost in the generations.
Yeah,
somebody.
Even those
Alpha.
the very young kids that are they're in middle school, whatever. They even have Dogecoin. They have crypto. So you have all age ranges. And on the Gen Z point, I think that this is a tremendous opportunity because they see this phenomenon. And when the credit unions embrace blockchain, I think the younger generation is just going to flow into the credit unions.
That is a big deal in this industry. I think we talked about on our last episode about the credit unions need to get younger membership-wise, big time. And I think
this is the way.
One of the ways to do it for sure. Yeah. And the other thing, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how the younger generations are getting into this. I mean, and it's making us or making them more financially literate, which is what we didn't have in previous generations. My generation,
100%.
If you can balance a checkbook, look how much trouble that gets me in,
When I was in college, 20 years ago as a freshman, the first thing I saw walking out of my dormitory in Boston was these people trying to sell me a credit card. And you have a lot of young people who got trouble. They got into trouble. They got those cards, and there wasn't really a lot of financial literacy in schools and things like that to teach these things, unfortunately. And the interesting thing about blockchain that I find, especially with the younger generation, is they learn how money works. They say, well, how does Bitcoin work? And it's like, wait, how is the US dollar printed? What's quantitative easing?
They want to know the history in the background,
Yeah, and everybody who gets into blockchain and crypto learns these things. And so now you're having savvier young people who are not getting so much into debt, but they're investing into crypto. They're using DeFi to learn, I think Albert Einstein called it, one of the great world wonders is compounding interest. They're discovering compounding interest. And that's huge.
And that's
the younger generations are discovering compounding interest, something that Albert Einstein mentioned is a wonder of the world. And this gentleman here sitting interviewing these two individuals from Metallicus, Marshall Hayner and Arena Birkin, is saying, hey, look, blockchain technology is making the younger generation financially literate. It should be your goal. Again, why we preach education. Start to learn DeFi is because these younger generations, they're coming. And if you don't follow the path of education and enlightenment in this new digital era, you risk being left behind, which is why we stress the importance of this. So let's go over and get digitally literate together. Let's read the article that Paul Gray put out on DeFi lending, a new frontier for banks and financial institutions, because this just goes hand in hand with what Marshall just said and what the gentleman Sid Powell said, and what we're going to continue to show you guys in today's video breakdown is happening in the DeFi ecosystem on chains, on networks like the Xrpl and Stellar. We'll get into that here in just a second after we read this. So decentralized finance, DeFi, has transformed how people think about money. One of the most compelling innovations is crypto collateralized lending, a system where digital assets can be deposited, pooled, and lent out with yields that compound continuously, not quarterly or annually. That is important. For individual users, the appeal is clear. You get passive income on idle digital assets. Crypto deposits generate a return in real time. You get instant liquidity. Users can borrow against their own holdings without having to liquidate them. That is so powerful, right? If you want to buy a house in the future with your XRP profits, you don't have to sell your XRP. You don't have to go to the bank to get a house loan. You can literally just lend out your XRP position if it's worth $300,000 in the future, because XRP goes to $50. You can lend out that $300,000 worth of XRP, borrow a 75% against it on loan protocol, and go buy your house with stable coins, right? This is huge. You get transparent automated systems. Smart contracts replace middlemen, ensuring yield distribution is fair and predictable. But the opportunity extends far beyond individual investors. For banks, credit unions, and financial institutions, or FIs, they can adopt this model to open entirely new revenue streams. I repeat, revenue streams, while strengthening their relationship with customers. Why it's an appealing opportunity for banks and credit unions. It says new income streams. Traditional term deposits in markets like New Zealand typically yield 4 to 5% annually, and DeFi lending yields are often significantly higher and they accrue continuously. By offering access to these markets, banks and credit unions can capture a part of that margin and pass enhanced returns to their customers. That is a huge upgrade. Custom stablecoins and deposit multipliers. Banks and credit unions can issue custom fully backed stablecoins tied one-to-one to their deposit base. Customers can convert deposits into these stablecoins, unlocking compliant access to DeFi lending markets. For banks and credit unions, this not only preserves deposits, but can actually grow them. Users seek the enhanced yield opportunities available. Then it goes on to talk about compliance first access, customer empowerment, and the strategic shift. For banks, credit unions, and financial institutions, the question isn't if decentralized lending will impact their industry. It's how quickly they can adopt it. By bringing these tools into their own platforms, institutions can attract deposits through innovative, higher yielding products, protect against deposit flight by keeping crypto engagement in-house. They can build customer loyalty through financial empowerment. They can diversify income beyond traditional lending and credit channels. DeFi lending presents the next evolution of savings accounts and credit markets, one that works for both users and institutions.
Basically, like in the broader world, like why do we do what we do? We generate alpha, we create yield so that people can take their savings and live off of it really well and retire off of it really well. And, to be able to broaden that access to not only everyone that we do today, the next swath of, broader retail investors, but even like the underbanked and unbanked people who are now adopting stablecoins in their wallets.
This is, again, huge. And all of these things are happening at a very rapid pace. So let's go over and look at chains that you most likely know, especially if you've been watching the CYPRX platform for some time now. This was a huge development that was announced at the beginning of October from Loan Protocol. Stellar XLM is now live on the Loan Protocol. I said here, this is a game changer because now the top ISO tokens, HBAR, XRP, XLM, are all available to be posted as collateral. You never have to sell your bags. You can unlock liquidity with holding long-term, and you can earn extra yield with loan token initiatives. Now, this isn't really what I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to show you guys more recent announcements. This is from just the other day, roughly about 6 days ago on October 3rd. And this is Jazzy Cooper, Director of Product Management at Xrpl. So if you're watching the CYPRX YouTube, you most likely have heard about and listen to what she says is coming for the Xrpl.
We're introducing a new lending protocol to the XRP ledger. It will allow for credit origination on chain. And the way that it works is basically users can deposit capital into a single asset vault and receive a share token, just like, one side of the automated market maker. And then essentially you can have what's called a loan broker that will create a new loan for a particular borrower, and that will remove liquidity from the single asset vault and create a fixed term interest bearing loan for a particular borrower.
So you guys get the picture, right? The Xrpl is launching a lending protocol. Now, I want to just take you guys back to this little tiny snippet from what Paul Gray wrote, where it says, for banks, credit unions, and FIs, the question isn't if decentralized lending will impact their industry, it is how quickly they can adopt it, right? This goes hand in hand with the recent post from an individual representative from a large organization. If we come over here, this is something that I just recently put out to you guys. This is from ING. And if we look at what it says this is coming directly from the lead digital assets at wholesale banking from ING. Couple things. He says, initially, we expect demand from corporates and financial institutions for cross-border payments, improved payment solutions, and tokenized security settlement. But it can extend to retail, B2C, and DeFi over time. Then if we come over here, he says, even if we wouldn't pursue DeFi integrations, once the stablecoin is issued, it might still naturally find its way into DeFi. This is a huge statement coming, again, directly from a financial institution. They're starting to realize that DeFi is inevitable. This is just the beginning of what is to come. For example, if we come over here, I mentioned to you all, don't forget that this happened at the beginning of the month. This is just from a few days ago as well, at the beginning of October. I said this is huge for DeFi expansion on the Stellar network. Bitcoin.com, a major player in the crypto space since 2015, just integrated DeFi features directly into its wallet system. Users can now buy, sell, and swap XLM and Stellar assets, access DeFi tools like yield generation and liquidity pools natively. They can earn rewards through Stellar's ecosystem with just a few clicks. This is a clear signal that DeFi is becoming the new standard. Rather than relying on separate platforms, users will be able to earn, transact, and access open financial tools directly from their wallets, powered by Stellar's low fees, speed, and programmable DeFi capabilities. If we come over here to Bitcoin.com with 103,000 followers, they actually pinned this announcement right at the top of their X profile just the other day on October 6th. If we come over here to the actual announcement, you guys can see it says, Bitcoin.com, a global leader in onboarding millions into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency since 2015. They are a freaking dinosaur in this space. Today announced the launch of Stellar XLM and Stellar-based assets and DeFi protocols in the Bitcoin wallet app. This is, again, a game changer. Just shows you guys that this is happening regardless, with or without you. So it just behooves you all to tap in and pay attention, especially if you hold digital assets like XLM. With the integration, Bitcoin.com wallet users will be able to, again, like I said, buy, sell, and swap XLM and Stellar-based tokens. But the more important part is where it says access DeFi features, including earning yield and participating in liquidity pools. Now with Aqua and Blend, which are protocols built on Stellar, native protocols directly within the wallet. Stellar was built to make global financial infrastructures more inclusive, and with this integration with Bitcoin.com, it means more people can now access assets and DeFi on Stellar in just a few clicks. This is an exciting step in expanding the reach of the Stellar ecosystem to millions of new users, and we're excited to see how these assets are now available in the global community, said Raja, Chief Business Officer of the Stellar Development Foundation. So this was just great to see, and another ongoing announcement in the DeFi ecosystem on protocols and chains, networks that you most likely have already known and heard about, but have previously lacked DeFi primitives and capabilities, are now being integrated into wallets that have existed since 2015 to give their users, which are in the millions, access to these DeFi primitives. Now, all of this goes hand in hand with something that John Ungerlin, the Chief Information Officer at the LAND CUSO, or Credit Union Service Organization, said in an interview just a couple of days ago. Take a second here and listen.
I would say kind of a philosophical idea that guides us here is this ancient saying that money is the mother's milk of politics, right? So when we talk about local financial institutions and why we want to see them connected to these new types of money, it's because it's very easy to imagine a world where all of finance gets hyper consolidated through a disruptive event here. And, you know, it's as simple as if local financial institutions aren't preparing a strategy where they're going to plug into stable coins, offer their own stable coins, connect to Bitcoin, connect to Ethereum, then they're, you know, de facto disconnected from the money business, unplugged from the money business. And as you alluded to, JP Morgan and all the Wall Street firms and Bank of America and everybody else will step in. There are already Fed white papers out there that show that those players are testing and proving their own non-NACHA, non-ACH, non-EFT settlement rails. So why we wouldn't be doing the same, I don't know. That's why we didn't sit around. We know that the large players are finding faster, better, cheaper ways to move money. So we went ahead and built the gateway that local FIs need for that. Look, it's simple. I want my kid to live in a world where if he wants to build a business or buy a house or secure his digital wealth, he doesn't have to be a lone wolf and a maverick and store it in an external wallet somewhere. He can put it to work in his local community, and he can make it part of the community economy, and he can work with local financial institution representatives that, you know, have a bigger purpose in mind, a higher purpose in mind than just, you know, me hodling my Bitcoins in my hardware wallet. You know, that's easy enough to do. I've done that for a long time. What I want to do is I want to put digital wealth to work in the local economy and community and help it enrich a cooperative network as opposed to just squat on it myself in a digital asset wallet.
Put your digital assets to work in this new digital economy. And he specifically mentioned and emphasized that these financial institutions are running tests. Well, if you guys remember, we started off today's video breakdown. Now we're going to roll into the ending. I know that this has been pretty extensive. We started with listening to the CEO of Maple Finance talk about what the rich do. They don't sell their assets. They lend them out. They borrow against them. They rehypothecate. They grow their wealth. They get upside appreciation in their portfolio, and they take a tax break, right? Well, if we come over here just to show you guys that these institutions are for a fact testing out these strategies. I always like to show you guys 110% proof. I'm going to show you guys that these strategies are available to you, that this gentleman at the beginning said to you all, in order for you to maintain your exposure in this digital asset ecosystem, you could participate in these DeFi strategies. But I want to show you guys that these banks, these asset managers, they already are. So I said here in this post, Monarch Asset Management has now openly confirmed that in 2025, they are actively participating in DeFi looping strategies. What was once considered an experimental retail tactic is now being adopted by institutional asset managers, leveraging protocols to amplify fixed yield and optimize capital efficiency on chain.
To compensate for the risk, right? And which is why what ends up happening for us is we end up looking at real world assets, and almost always we are looking to loop it, right? So, and I know it's not a security question. So in fact, we're actually adding more risk, right? But we like to loop it so that the yield is higher than what it would be traditionally in just from the asset itself, right? And looping means basically depositing, rehypothecating the asset, depositing it somewhere, borrowing USDC against it, and buying more of the same asset.
So he's talking about looping strategies, which leads me over here to this post. I said these are the kinds of yield strategies people should be paying attention to, but most don't even realize exist. Shout out to the CYPRX researchers for this document. These are the type of documents that you can find in our private CYPRX Discord in the research section, so you want to further your education. I said protocols like Pendle and tools like Boros are opening up advanced fixed income and yield tokenization strategies on chain, giving individuals the ability to structure returns, hedge rates, or lock in fixed income directly from their wallets. This is financial freedom at your fingertips if you know where to look. At CYPRX, our research team finds the best documents, reports, and strategies so our community can stay ahead and truly understand DeFi opportunities that DeFi brings. The education is there. It's just a matter of who is paying attention. Remember, at the beginning, the gentleman said, we need to become financially literate, right? These younger generations are, so it would behoove us if millennials and any older generation became financially literate as well as digital wealth continues to transition. So we're just going to come over here to this document. It's from September 9th, 2025. Galaxy, obviously, of course, a large asset manager in the space. And it says here, this paper presents a framework for understanding and comparing the diverse ways yield is generated in the DeFi ecosystem. It considers several dimensions of classifications, including the variability of returns, the type of underlying assets involved, and the mechanisms used to generate income and the risks associated with each strategy. So it's a full white paper talking about different DeFi strategies, discusses and talks about where the yield comes from. But look right down here, what it goes on to mention, considering that I just showed you guys a video clip of an asset manager confirming that they are participating in DeFi looping strategies. Here is literally word for word a DeFi looping strategy that anyone in firm of retail or institutions can participate in. It says, let's take a closer look at the power of stacking yield, one of DeFi's most compelling innovations. In earlier sections, we saw how users can stake ETH or Solana into liquid staking tokens or LSTs like STETH or RETH or JIT-SOL, which are all liquid staked versions of ETH and Solana, and restake them into liquid staking tokens or LRTs like ETH, ETH. These base assets already generate yield through protocol staking and restaking mechanisms, but that's just the first layer. On platforms like Aave, users can deposit their LSTs or LRTs into lending markets, enabling them to earn additional yield on top of their staking rewards. Lending markets like Aave pay depositors a variable APY, funded by borrowers who post collateral to access liquidity. In effect, this creates a dual reward system, staking income plus lending income, without having to unstake or sell the original asset. So I'm not going to read this thoroughly through to you guys. I don't want to bore you all to death, but these are just the types of documents that we read in the private CYPRX community. On top of that, to show you guys even further proof, this is the last thing I just want to show you guys before we hop off here, that this transformation is happening. Again, here at CYPRX, we're always just trying to show you guys the documented proof, the insights from the people in the space that matter, people with actual valid credentials in the space voicing that this transformation is happening. This is a Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub document from September 2025, so just last month. And here I said, this BIS Innovation Hub report definitely leans bullish for DeFi, especially when you read between the lines. Here's why. Central bank governors are being educated on DeFi. I repeat, central bank governors are being educated on DeFi. The report explicitly mentions seminars to equip decision makers with knowledge of emerging technologies like AI, distributed systems, and DeFi. And if we come here in the document and we take a quick look, here it says, finally recognizing the importance of equipping decision makers with knowledge of emerging technologies, the workshop has led plans for additional seminars for central bank governors. These sessions will focus on key topics such as AI, distributed systems, and DeFi. So to full circle all of this, because I played a video clip from the gentleman here that mentioned like, hey, digital literacy is important. Well, now I've shown you guys what is going to be at these panel discussions of central bank representatives. And that topic and discussion is going to be surrounding DeFi. So this is just physical proof and more solidification on what you guys should focus your attention on. As always, bringing you all some of the realest information in the game. If you want to tap into our free content, head over to the CYPRX YouTube, look up the yield playlist in our playlist tab. There's like over 70 free video breakdowns that go into the topic and discussion on yield generation on digital assets. If you guys want to dive a little bit further than that, head over to CYPRXtrading.com. You guys can tap into our Wealth 28 Club, and you can watch how we are earning yield and passive rewards actively in the crypto ecosystem right now on our digital assets. As always, none of this is financial advice. Always bringing you guys some of the realest research in the game. Smash that thumbs up button and subscribe. We do appreciate the love and the support, and I will see you all in the next video break.